Welcome to the 21st Century Physio podcast, Marijn.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
It's very exciting. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about talking about, technology, and one of the new favourite apps that we've discovered in our clinic recently, Physitrack, and something that you've been a big part of, for the last few years. So I'm really excited to hear about, your journey through your career, and then what you think the physiotherapy profession is leading towards in the 21st century. So really appreciate you stepping out and chatting about that. For the listeners who don't know about you, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, Marijn from Physitrack, indeed. I've been living in Australia for about 15 years, originally from the Netherlands. And in terms of my background, quite diverse. I'm a bit of a generalist in general. So I've studied tourism back in Europe. Never actually worked in tourism. I ended up at Nike after finishing my degree.
Right.
And so that was my first job. That basically took me about 8 years down the track. So I've been working for Nike for 8 years in mostly sales operations roles, but also some IT related roles in rolling out some systems across the business. So that was interesting. First kind of job out of uni, and not a bad company to work for at all. That's very much an understatement. And then since then, just worked for a number of marketing companies, both in Australia, but also some American companies as well. And then, actually one of the co-founders of Physitrack, who actually used to be and still is one of my high school buddies from back in the days in Amsterdam, he tapped me on the shoulder, and he's been developing websites, and he actually launched the very first dating website in the Netherlands, which was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So it was very much kind of not so much the done thing, I suppose, at that time. And so he's been very successful, teamed up with another guy who's got a very strong finance background. And they came to me and said, well, hey, you're living in Australia. We're building this new platform. Have a look. What do you think? And so I had a look at that. I thought that's fantastic. I thought, well, it's something that's definitely where healthcare in general is going. And as a patient, I thought, well, that's something I would love to have when I do see my physio, for example. So, so that's how I kind of went through that for couple of different career changes to be in healthcare as a non-healthcare professional. So that was an interesting ride.
I'm sure you've learned a lot along the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think the first months, first 6-12 months, it was a massive learning curve, obviously, to get your head around all the ins and outs of allied healthcare, in particular the healthcare system, from a practitioner, healthcare professional point of view. Which was a massive learning curve, but I think in general, what I've found in the last few years, practitioners they're super, receptive to technology in general. Doesn't always mean that they start implementing it, but I think everyone likes the idea of it and understands that that's where the market is heading. That's what consumers are expecting as well. So that made it a bit easier for me to have those kind of conversations. But it was initially an interesting learning curve for sure. Yeah.
And so you said that, there's a little bit difficult at first. Like, what are some of the skills that you learned from your background working with Nike and that implementation, and with your marketing background? How did that help you start to move into the healthcare industry?
Yeah, I guess when we started as Physitrack, I guess the way we pitched the apps initially, it was all around time savings, which is still true. But what we found is that it wasn't necessarily the key reason why practitioners wanted to use it. In many cases, it was all around creating a better patient experience, and of course, working with Nike for many years, it was it's a marketing company based. I mean, they're selling runners and sporting goods, but in the end, it's a marketing business, and their campaigns are famous around the world. We've all seen them, the Socceroos and whatever else. So I think coming from a marketing company and being able to then tell that story in terms of improving the customer experience, the client experience. And using technology to do that, I think helped me a lot. I think on one hand, so that's probably one of the areas I think that my Nike background helped. And then talking about, I suppose, the client experience as a whole, so not just from a tech point of view, but even from a bit more of a wider conversation. So Nike, of course, when you walk into one of their retail stores, it's a completely different experience. And you can basically take that example and apply that to any healthcare business when it comes to, well, when a client walks through your door, how do you want their experience to be? And that's anything from the interior, from the music you might be playing in the waiting room, the reception, then follow-ups online. So it's the whole branding and marketing experience basically. And again, I think my background from Nike helps me to have those kind of conversations with healthcare professionals. Yeah.
Definitely, you can see that come across really strongly in the brand of Physitrack as well. Just jump onto your website and that free, demo that you've got of the app. It's a really nice experience and first interaction for someone with your company. For the listeners who don't know much about Physitrack, what is Physitrack?
Right, so Physitrack is, some people think it's an exercise prescription software, which is partially true, but only partially. So we see ourselves as a client engagement solution, and that of course touches on many different things. Exercise prescription is one component. So we have just under 4,000 exercise videos, all fully narrated, that we recorded ourselves. Then you can prescribe those exercises, but you can then start tracking your clients' progress remotely, and that's, I think, one of the key features in Physitrack. So it's really moving from here's your exercise program, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, good luck, to here's your program, please report back to you how you progress, because then when the client comes back to the clinic, it's all about, okay, well, how did you go? Which exercises were you struggling with? So it's really changing the conversation that healthcare professionals have with their clients when they come back in the clinic. So it's the tracking of the outcomes. Then education is another big part of Physitrack. So the ability to, again, prescribe educational content to clients as part of their program, which is equally important and sometimes even more important than exercise. And the final component is telehealth. So you can have secure video calls as well as some secure messaging with your clients. And again, that's really, of course, looking at where healthcare is going, which is really where clients want to, I suppose, consume healthcare where they are, and regardless of where their healthcare practitioner might be based. So it's really kind of combining all those four elements into one platform, and that's in a very quick nutshell what Physitrack is and does. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think that last point touches really nicely on the last podcast I did with Greg Todd, which he was all about trying to service your patients and clients wherever they are, trying to save them as much time, and everything that he went back to is how can we give people back more time in their day and make it easy for them. So, and that's one thing that we've definitely noticed since we started using Physitrack as well. So you mentioned, you want to enhance the experience and the value for patients using Physitrack. What are some of the ways, or some of the novel ways that you've seen clinics adopting Physitrack into their practice?
There's probably a few different ways. I think I suppose the very easy ways of incorporating Physitrack and I suppose communicating that extra kind of added value proposition to your clients is by using, I suppose, Physitrack as part of your marketing material. So we see a lot of clinics, which initially we didn't kind of expect to happen, but it's now been probably at least 2 years now where people really come to us and ask for marketing materials that they can discuss Physitrack on their social media outlets, on their blogs, and really use it as a key selling point to their clients to say, hey, we know how you live your lives, which is basically on their mobiles and on their iPads. So when you come to us, this is the kind of service that you receive. And of course, Physitrack is only one small component of the whole experience. But that's really, I think, from our point of view, really cool to see that people appreciate, I suppose, like you mentioned before, the way we've designed the app, which we've done together with Apple, which I think shows in terms of the way the app works, in terms of the whole user experience, and clients and then practitioners as well appreciate it. So that was a nice, I suppose, a nice angle. And then I think, especially on the telehealth side, we see some more and more clinics that really started to basically offer a full service where, as a client, I can go to a website to book a package, which might include an exercise program, X number of telehealth consultations, unlimited secure messaging. So it's really kind of shifting from, I guess, from a transactional type of solution to more kind of outcomes service-based solution, which is obviously where healthcare bit by bit is moving towards, which is great. And it's great to see that people really put Physitrack front and center when it comes to offering those kind of services, where people pay online basically through the portal, book an appointment through a PMS, and then when it's ready, people use Physitrack to have the telehealth consultation. So it's great to see some really innovative stuff happening in healthcare, for sure.
And I like the outcomes-based measures that you just mentioned. I know the USA is heavily integrating that way and moving very quickly towards that. But that's something Physitrack does do really nicely as well, is that it allows you to track those outcomes over time, which maybe you weren't getting. As you mentioned, a patient goes away and does their exercises for a week, or most likely probably doesn't do them. You don't really know apart from that subjective interview when they come back for the next session. But now you can actually track that over time, measure the progression as well as against different other outcomes that you built into there.
Absolutely, and it's quite interesting. There's actually a study that Melbourne University completed. It should be published in the coming months, where they compared Physitrack to giving patients just a piece of paper and kind of hope for the best in terms of outcomes, in terms of increase in adherence. So we're looking forward to that study. We haven't seen the actual results yet, but just based on anecdotal feedback, we know that patients sit around 80 to 90% compliance with their exercises by using Physitrack versus perhaps 20 or 30% in the past. And it's not rocket science, obviously. I mean, they're all video-based exercises, so people, there's no more excuse not to know how to do your exercises. First of all, I suppose, and then the stick behind the door, knowing that my practitioner can see what I'm up to. Is a massive one, and just for clients to feel more engaged in their recovery when they're at home is huge, and in particular amongst elderly patients actually, who in the past probably were too afraid to maybe ask, well, how am I supposed to do the exercise? Whereas now they're at home, they can watch the video and they can keep going with their program. So it's a great advantage for sure.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's just that quick reassurance that patients need, just to ask a question. I'm feeling a little bit sore doing this exercise. Is that okay? Often it's enough just to be able to send a message, yeah, that's fine, continue, and they'll feel a lot better and they'll start to get some great results rather than waiting 2 weeks till the next appointment where they haven't done anything and potentially been going backwards in that time as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the other thing we're seeing too is, and then like you said, the US, UK, they're a bit further ahead than Australia at the moment in terms of I suppose the requirement to track outcomes. But in particular in UK, for example, whether it's the NHS or private health insurers, they're really, I suppose, starting to make the collection of outcomes data a requirement. So it's probably something that is it's probably moving to Australia in the not too far future. And obviously we want to help practitioners to be ready for that shift. And it's already happening on a small scale, where practitioners that are super keen on outcomes data and probably sometimes even run their own kind of internal mini clinical studies in a way, by collecting outcomes data, analyzing it, and really start comparing protocols and see which ones deliver better results, which can easily be done. Yeah.
And that fits our bias pretty nicely at Mac, collecting as much objective data as you can. And every patient that walks in through the door really is your own clinical study. We should be treating it as a science rather than traditionally I think healthcare has been treated more as an art form. So something that really fits our biases nicely. So obviously Physitrack's putting a big emphasis on the future towards virtual consultations. What are some of the other ways? You mentioned like people are selling it as packages. What are some other ways that you think virtual consults are going to fit in, and who are the ideal patient types to be using these consultations?
Yeah, good question. I think it really depends on the condition. I think first and foremost, I think, and also where the client is in terms of their progress. And I think quite often for the initial consultation, it might be a better solution in many cases to see the patient in person, to properly assess them, and then perhaps for any follow-up consultations to have that via telehealth in particular, of course, where there is no manual treatment involved, and that's of course applicable to physio, but in particular probably to EPs as well, where there is a lot less or no manual involvement at all in terms of the treatment. So it probably depends on the condition, but if you see in terms of clients, it could really be anyone, and it doesn't always need to be a client that's living far away. It could be a very busy CEO who might be in a meeting room 2 kilometers down the road, but they're in meetings all day, so all they have is 15 minutes to quickly move into a meeting room, shut the door, and have a quick consultation with the practitioner before they're off to the US, for example, for a business trip. So I think it's all kind of different scenarios on one hand. And then the other hand, of course, I mean, there are some very clear kind of examples. One of them obviously being the resources sector, mining companies that want to be able to follow up with clients who are working on remote sites. That's a bit of a natural fit, of course. But in the end, it could be used for any kind of client where the condition allows the client to be treated remotely. I think that's the key probably.
Okay. So you mentioned that some of the successes with Physitrack. Where do you often see that technology like this falls down? Because often implementation of something new into a practice can be difficult and challenging. For the clinic owner as well as for their staff and the patients. What are some of the things that you think where Physitrack or implementation of technology like this is difficult, and how do we overcome those struggles implementing new technology?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think, for the smaller clinics, obviously, the owner is obviously the physio at the same time. So it's pretty straightforward. They choose to sign up maybe with a couple of colleagues and that's it. The larger the organization, I think the more important it is for top management, whether it's a clinic owner, director, CEO, whoever it may be who's driving this. Is really driving it actually, and that's what we've seen sometimes where people like the idea. When it comes to the crunch and we start rolling out, is that staff doesn't feel engaged, maybe not part of the initial trial process, for example, and it's not really made mandatory. I think that's sometimes the reason why it could fall down, where top management or the directors say, well, it's up to you. If you want to use it, that's great, but if you don't want to use it, that's fine as well. And it kind of defeats the purpose in a way, because ideally you want to put as many patients as you want on Physitrack, so you can actually get the outcomes data in as well, and be able to to actually have a look at the data. So I think that's where it could potentially fall down, is in general, is where top management is not engaging staff and not making it mandatory. I think. Yeah.
Definitely. So this space has obviously changed a lot, even in the last 3 or 4 years in regards to, exercise prescription and the remote tracking of it, virtual consultations. Where's the future for Physitrack? Where do you think our treatment and rehabilitation is going to go over the next 5 to 10 years? Where's Physitrack going to be?
Yeah, look, for us, it's, I think the last 4 years, sort of 3-4 years, it's been mostly about pivoting, I suppose, the feature set, the business model, content. So I think where we are now, I think we're in a very good space. Obviously, 5 to 10 years is very hard to predict in any industry. Although healthcare seems to move a little bit more slowly. So
it definitely moves very slowly.
Maybe a bit easier to predict, but I think what we'll see is perhaps some more customizations. I think in general, and that's something we've already started doing now. But I think we'll see probably more of where. Obviously, we have our base patient app, but Physio app, as you know. But there are different iterations available and possible, where depending on the customer, on the clinical group, for example, whether it's public healthcare or private clinics, where they might require a specific set of features that we can develop for them. So I think customization, from our point of view, is something that we've already started seeing happening already. On one hand, and I'm sure it will continue in the future, where people like our ecosystem but probably want to set themselves aside from the rest, and customization is a great way of doing that, of course. And the other thing is, we work very closely with Apple, as you may know. So they helped us develop the apps that we have. So potentially there could be some integrations with, for example, Apple Watch. Obviously, Apple is quite big on augmented reality and virtual reality. So 5-10 years down the track, I wouldn't be surprised if you can even just I don't know, as your patient, you might have a telehealth consultation. You're on your phone with your practitioner, and as you do the exercise, your practitioner might get your range of motion, for example, or might get a copy of the exercise video next to it, so I can see that, yep, I'm actually doing the exercise correctly. So there's all kind of, I suppose, little steps up from here. You can imagine, and that it all sounds pretty futuristic, maybe, but it's here and there. It's already happening on a small scale. So it wouldn't be a massive step to start incorporating some of those things into our apps, I would say.
No, I think I'm a bit of a technology nerd, and I must admit I found a nice augmented reality app, which is actually quite interesting, where I thought it really could apply really well to something like exercise prescription, where it's actually putting someone into the room, into the environment through augmented reality. And this app, they were doing some dancing and singing and that type of thing, but using that to, instead of videos, I guess, to actually transform exercise prescription as well. So I thought that was a really interesting point that you brought up, augmented reality. I think that's really cool. Now, you mentioned integrations. We look at your website, you guys integrate with, many different, platforms. What are some of the, the key platforms you use, and how does the integration help business owners out there in their practice?
Yeah, it's interesting. We at the moment we basically integrate with all the practice management systems in Australia, many overseas as well, and really kind of early in the game, we noticed that was one of the key requirements or requests from people to have the integration and really see it as as an efficiency to basically just spend a lot less in different platforms, and knowing that when I set up my client in one system, it basically is available in the other platform as well. So so it's basically all the usual suspects in terms of the practice management systems like Clinico and Core Plus and Nuco and Front Desk and PPMP, GenSolve, probably missing a few here, but so basically most of the PMSs we are integrated with, and what it means in most cases is that you once you connect the two platforms, you can open your client directly from the PMS into Physitrack. So it means any data that's set up in the PMS is copied over, so you get your data in sync, which is great, saves you time as well. And then the other thing we started doing now as well is that every time you assign an exercise program to a client in Physitrack, a copy of that program is then uploaded back to the treatment notes in the PMS. So that's probably one of the most requested features lately. So we started doing that with at the moment with Nuco and with Front Desk.
Yeah, fantastic.
The others will come on board pretty quickly. So again, looking for some more efficiencies there, and really I suppose help practitioners to use the PMS as the source of truth in a way when it comes to client data. And the more we can help them with that, the better, obviously. So there'll be a lot more of that in the nearby future. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, that agile nature I think is really important these days for software and technology.
Yeah.
From a technology point of view and from a company point of view for Physitrack, is there any software or technology that you're using that you think could be implemented well into clinical practice or into health businesses that you think could help to start to revolutionise? I assume you guys are at the cutting edge of technology. You're using some cool applications.
Look, we are. Yeah, we are. I guess the kind of tools that we use are very similar to what most clinics or business owners already use as we speak. So things like Zoom, for example, for any team calls. We are all as a company, every person is basically located in a different city. So not there are no two people working out of the same office. So we have weekly calls through Zoom. I think WhatsApp groups are fantastic to for very quick kind of updates here and there and questions to make sure everyone is in the loop. We use a platform called Basecamp for any kind of project work. So Basecamp, very similar to Slack, I suppose, or Trello, and it works really well for us in terms of project work. Again, working with so many people remotely, it's absolutely key to know what's happening, who is working on what, who is supposed to follow up on the next big thing. So that's I think in general those are the kind of the key features that we have, key platforms that we use, and then probably one other one which probably not as applicable to healthcare business is a platform called customer.io. So it's a bit it's like a CRM where we basically do our whole onboarding system. So when practitioners sign up, you get some emails with tips and tricks, with training links, how to sign up with or how to link your practice management system, for example. I guess the equivalent to just thinking about it, the equivalent for healthcare practitioners would be Clinic Apps probably, which is kind of a CRM, but then specifically focused on client retention and reactivation. So that's probably one that could be interesting for healthcare practitioners more than customer.io, I would say. Yeah.
Yep, fantastic. I think there's some really good applications there, and people will get a lot of use out of those. So how do people find out more about Physitrack?
Probably the easiest way just to go to physitrack.com. As you mentioned before, there's a big fat button on the homepage for a free demo, so you can click on it and you can get a bit of a feel for some of the functionality. You can have a look in the library if you're interested to see what kind of content we have. You can also download Physitrack for iOS. So we have an iOS app for practitioners. So if you want to use it on your iPhone, on your iPad, you can do that as well. And again, there's a demo mode where you can just really nicely see how does it work in terms of the flow. There's a free 7-day trial as well. So if you wanted to trial it for a bit longer and basically use it for a week with all the bells and whistles, you can sign up for free, no obligation. So that's probably the best way to get started. I think it's an easy enough system to use. But yeah, like any new system, it probably takes a little bit of time to get your head around the flow. And how does it compare to at the moment where, I might just grab a piece of paper from my tray on my desk. So how does it translate to a Physitrack? And probably it means, a few bits and pieces like setting up your templates inside your library so you can just really quickly grab a template instead of grabbing a piece of paper, and things like that. So, but I think, getting started is pretty easy.
I think from an onboarding point of view and a simplicity point of view in learning, I think, Physitrack's, one of the apps that I've picked up recently that is, probably been the most user-friendly, I think, in regards to clinical practice and the easiest to implement. I think the templates are a really useful feature as well. As you said, it really speeds up the workflow rather than slowing it down, especially for people who stick figures like myself, aren't that good. So I'm going to put you on the spot before we finish.
Yeah,
what are the top 3 ways that Physitrack can help bring practices into the 21st century?
All right. How can we help? I guess one of the key things is obviously, we can help improve the whole client experience. So it's really about, okay, well, the client walks out of the clinic. Do they walk out of the clinic with a piece of paper that they don't really feel inspired about, or do they have a nice app on their phone that's super user friendly, with all the content that they need, where they can message their practitioner and report back on their progress. So I think that's probably one of the key things. It kind of starts there. Of course, there's the efficiencies with the integrations with the practice management systems, and that's a big one. Like I said, we integrate with all of them, all the key ones in Australia. So that's, I think, from an efficiency point of view, is of course massive, and you'll see that there's a lot more data that's going to be pushed back to the PMSs from Physitrack in the coming months. So I think that's a really cool one.
That's exciting.
That's 2. A third one, let me think. Probably one of the most probably underrated components is the educational section inside Physitrack. And something we started doing there is partner with a company called Primal Pictures. They're very big on 3D and anatomical animations. So we started incorporating some custom content of theirs in our library there. And it's really cool. There's some really cool 3D animations that you can not just give to clients as part of their exercise program. So the clients, when they get home, they can still look it up on the app. It's actually a great way to engage clients in the clinic as well. So taking through at point of care to have a look and say, well, this is your condition. Here's what's happening with your knee. And now here's your program and on how we're going to fix that. So I think there's a couple of components that can make a real big difference, I think, for practitioners. On one hand, to again enhance the overall experience for the clients, increase efficiencies, and probably the final one is having outcomes data available. I think that's a key one. I think that's going to change the whole conversation that practitioners have with patients. It's going to be outcomes based. It's going to be about, let's look at your progress. Where was the issue? And then for the practitioner to be able to adjust their treatment plan based on live data, I think is a game changer in terms of helping their clients achieve better outcomes. So that's maybe 4, but
that's a bonus tip there. But I think that's a really important one to finish on there. So I highly recommend, if you haven't heard of Physitrack, if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure you go to the website physitrack.com.co.
.com,
physitrack.com, and try out the free demo, sign up. It's a really way to enhance your practice. I think it's definitely one of the best apps that I've seen, the ease of implementation into a practice. So I can't recommend it highly enough. Really appreciate your time today, and I know you've got a very busy schedule, sort of running this whole Physitrack down under, but I really appreciate it, and I think some great knowledge for people out there. If they've got any questions directly about the Physitrack, there's some emails that they can contact through the website as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sales@physitrack.com is probably the easiest one to get hold of us. So feel free.
On that note, we'll leave it there for another episode of the 21st Century Physio podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.